This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Sai. So, regularly we learn Masechta Sukkah, and we're going to continue to do that today. We're going to learn about what Reb Shimon bar Yochai has to say in Masechta Sukkah. But let's just begin with a little Hakdama. We mentioned this partially in Shalosh Shudas, and what is the Shoresh of Lag BaOmer? Why is Lag BaOmer a Yom of Rachamim? The Arizal's Megala and Tumakaimus in the Shar Kavanos in Sfiras HaOmer and in Pesach. That we know the oisios of din are Aleph Lamed Hey and then Yud Mem. Elokim is oisios din. And the Arizal is Megala that the way you are mamtik the dinim, actually he says more than that. He says the way you bring the Shem of Rachamim, he says explicitly, is you have to be mechalef, you change the letters of Elokim to what he calls the oisios hakoidmos. In other words, the letters before Aleph Lamed Hey, Yud and Mem. So what comes before Aleph? Aleph. Aleph cannot be changed. Lamed is a chaf. Hey becomes dalid. Yud becomes tes. And the final mem becomes a regular mem. And therefore, if somebody changes the Elokim, if someone is able to be mamtik the dinim, change the letters Aleph Lamed Hey Yud Mem to Aleph Chaf Dalid Tes regular mem, which instead of Elokim being 86, you get Aleph Chaf Dalid Tes Mem 74. How is one mamtik the dinim through the midah of bitachon? Bitchu b'Hashem adei ad. Ad is the midah of bitachon. It's mamtik the dinim, and it changes midas hadin into what he calls the bechinas rachamim. Instead of Elokim, it becomes Elokim chayim, says the Arizal. Now, let's just take it a step further. This we did not mention last night. Why? Okay. If you take the three middle letters of the oisios koidmos of Elokim, so we're going to ignore the aleph for a minute, we're going to ignore the mem, you're going to take the lamed hey yud, and we're going to make it chaf daled tes. Chaf daled tes is what? 33. Lag. The shoresh harachamim of aleph chaf daled tes mem is what? Is lag. Lamed gimel. Right? You take the three middle letters, forgetting the aleph and the mem on the extremes, you take the chaf and the dalet and the tes, you get 33. So why, it's nice words, but why are we ignoring the bookends? Why are we ignoring the aleph and the mem? Well, the Arizal says that since the aleph and mem cannot be changed, you can't be machlef them. You can't advance them because there's nothing before aleph, and a mem remains a mem, and end a mem becomes a regular mem. So since those letters are unaffected, so the ikar shoresh of hamtakas hadinim is in changing the three middle letters of lamed yud hey becoming chaf daled tes. So therefore that is the shoresh of dinim of lag. He adds another thing. This is pshat in the pasuk when Yaakov Avinu says Eid Hagal. Eid Hagal. Eid is 74. 74 is the total gematria of Aleph, Chaf, Tes, Dalet, Mem, right? And that's 74. But the Yikar Shoresh of Rachamim is the Gal. Eid Hagal Azeh. So these five letters, the five letters of Aleph, Chaf, Dalet, Tes, Mem, correspond to the five new Talmidim that Rabbi Akiva taught on Lag BaOmer after the Chaf Daled Elef passed away. So they represent the five, the Gadlos of Gvuros, the Gadlos, which are Aleph Chaf Daled Tes Mem. Okay, Marv Rabbi said, what does this have to do with Masechta Sukkah? So there's a very important Gemara Masechta Sukkah on Daf Mem Hey Amud Beis about Reb Shimon bar Yochai. And the Gemara says like this. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Mishum Reb Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Yirmiyah said in the name of Reb Shimon bar Yochai, Yochal ani liftar es kol ha'olam kulai min adin. I could personally exempt the whole world from judgment, miyom shenevresi arata, from the day I was created until now. So Reb Shimon bar Yochai stands up on his feet and he says, I could basically take it on the chin for the whole world. I could take on the judgment, I could take on the mishpat. I personally can exempt the entire Kala Olam Kulai from din. So the question is, what does the holy Tana Reb Shimon bar Yochai mean? By the way, so if you can't make it to Meron, there's a lot of objection whether you're allowed to go to Meron. The Chassam Sofer says he personally would not go. He said, don't count me among the people who go to Meron. But, L'maisa, a lot of people want to go. So Rabbi Yaakov Hillel wrote a sefer on Lag BaOmer called Eid Hagal. So he says, if you can't make it to Meron, we know the Yerushalmi says, Ein oisin tzion letzadikim dvarav heim tziyunam. In other words, we don't make a matzeva for a tzaddik. Their words are their matzeva. So he brings down from Kadmonim that when you learn the Torah of a tzaddik, it's as if you're at their matzeva. It's as if you're at their kever. So if we can't make it there, at least we're going to learn Torah from Reb Shimon, and we hope Zechusai Yagein Aleinu. So the question is, what does Reb Shimon Bar Yochai mean? Yachal ani liftar kala olam kulai min adin, that he could exempt the whole world from din. So Rabbi Kiva Eger on the page, he in the Golian Ashas, he says, Ayin Avos Rab Nasan Perik Tezayin. Rabbi Kiva Eger says, look in the Avos Rab Nasan Perik Tezayin. So what does it say in the Avos Rab Nasan Perik Tezayin? By the way, it's not on your sheet. Well, the Mishnah, the Brisa on Avos Rab Nasan Perik Tezayin, Brisa Dalet, says, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai Omer, Mikan Shein Yisrael Royin Pnei Gehenim Lo'ilam. From here we see that Klal Yisrael will never see the face of Gehenna. So Rabbi Kiva Eger feels this is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is referring to. That when he says, I could pater the whole world from din, how? Through his famous memra that Yisrael will never see Pnei Gehenna. Lamaisa, the Marsham, he once had to give a hesped on Lag BaOmer, and he said a very interesting pshat in this memra, that Yachal ani liftar es kala olam kulai min hadin. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Antonina said to Rebbe that the guf and the neshama could pater each other from the din. Why? Because the guf could say, the neshama sinned. Because before the neshama was instilled in my body, I was lying there like a rock. I never did anything wrong. Before I had a neshama, the guf says, I couldn't talk by davening. I couldn't take out a cell phone by davening. I couldn't do any averos. So the guf said, what do you want from me? It's my neshama's fault. And the neshama says, what do you want from me? Before I had a guf, I was floating around in Shamayim. Floating around in Shamayim, I never did any chatam. It's the guf's fault. As soon as I associated with the guf, that's when I started to sin. So the guf said, I'm pater, it's the neshama's fault. And the neshama says, I'm pater because it's the guf's fault. Comes Rebbe, and Rebbe says, you know what this is analogous to? It's like the blind man and the cripple. The blind man sitting on top of the cripple. And what? So if the blind man is sitting on top of the cripple, he's in big trouble, right? But if the cripple is sitting on top of the blind man, and they steal, so each one could say, the blind guy could say, I couldn't have seen anything without the cripple, and the cripple could say, I couldn't have walked without the blind man. But what do? Elamai. So the dayan takes the cripple, puts it on top of the blind man, and punishes them both together. So too, la'asad lavai, Hashem's going to take the neshama, put it back in the guf, and punish the two of them together. But says the Marsham, why do we paskin that the guf and the neshama are chayiv? Because there's a halacha that, let's say two people are carrying a heavy object on Shabbos, and A could not have carried it without B. What's the halacha? Chayiv, right? Very good. Chayiv. Excellent. Very impressed. Ze eino yachal, v'ze eino yachal, we paskin chayiv. And the Rajba and the Chuvas, and the Chacham Tzvi and the Chuvas, and the Yavitz and the Chuvas, and the Radvaz and his Chuvas say this applies to Kol Yisurim Shabbatayra. That Ze eino yachal, v'ze eino yachal, shneim chayavim. Therefore, the Guf and the Neshama are busted. Why are they busted? Because it's Ze eino yachal, v'ze eino yachal. Lamaisa, the psak of Reb Shimon is Ze eino yachal, v'ze eino yachal are pater. Reb Shimon holds Ze eino yachal, v'ze eino yachal pater. So that means the Acharmei of from Shana, we don't pass him like Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. That's why we're in big trouble. But Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says that I could take it on, I could pater the whole world from din. Why? Because Reb Shimon's shita is Ze eino yachal, v'ze eino yachal is pater. V'meilan shamayim, the guf is off the hook, and the neshama is off the hook. We don't pass like Reb Shimon.
Why was he saying this?
What? Shnayim is by Ze eino yachal, v'ze eino yachal. Ze eino yachal, v'ze eino yachal is chayiv.
Why wasn't Marsham saying this Torah?
So, what was the Maisa? That's a kasha and a Maisa. Basically, I'll tell you what happened. What? The Maisa, we do not paskin like Reb Shimon. No. Yes. We don't paskin like Shimon. Anan kaimalon deloik Reb Shimon. But there's a klal then on somebody's yard site, you paskin like them. I'll have a lot of Torah on that, but
Also love what we're going to pass like Reb Shimon.
the Beis Shammai, but not Reb Shimon. Shimon, we don't paskin like.
I thought Reb Shimon was from Beis Shammai.
No. Okay, so why? Basically, the Marsham's wife died on Lag BaOmer, Tafresh Samach Beis, and the Hamadas Matseva Min Hashemai was on that day. So even though it's a day of Rachamim, but he said, what can I do? I have to put up her Matseva, and he gave Torah for Reb Shimon in honor of the occasion. Okay, I didn't want to talk about this at all. This is not the subject of today's shir. This is the subject of today's shir. I want to talk about a very controversial topic, probably the most controversial topic in all of Judaism, and that is work. Are you allowed to work? Are you allowed to work? Is it a good thing to work? Should you work? Is it better to work, not to work? Learner, earner? So, there's a Reb Shimon Bar Yochai has a lot to say about this. There's a Gemara in Brachas on Daf Lamed Hamad Beis. The Gemara says like this: V'yasafta diganecha, you should gather your grain. What does that mean? You should gather your grain. Says the Gemara. It says Lo Yomer Sefer Torah Mipicha v'higisa ba yoimam v'layla. Right. So when do you need to learn? You don't always have to learn. You only have to learn when it's either day or night. Anytime it's not day or night. For example, right? People say, "This I don't get for the life of me." Okay, you follow sports. Okay, it's not the worst Yitzhar in the world. You're part of a fantasy league. Are you meshuga? It's not. You crazy? And people are part of more than one fantasy league. Are you lost your mind? Now this is the whole sports is olam hadimyon. This dimyon is not hoyd shebahoyd. It's dimyon shebadimyon. And people are more than one. Anyway. So are you allowed to do that? Of course. Whenever it's not day or night, it's mutter l'charchila. The only thing is, whenever it's day or night, you have to make sure you use your time wisely. So the question is, but when are you going to work? It says, "V'yasafta deganecha," you should gather your grain. So Rabbi Shmuel learns it like this. It says the Gemara. It says, "V'higis v'yom v'layla, layomash sefer Torah zamipicha yachal dvarim kichsavan." I would think you have to learn day and night. Talmud Rabbi Yasafta deganecha hanig bahen minig darachas. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel, meaning you have to act like a normal human being. You go to work and you learn when you can. That's the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. Hanig bahem minag darachatz. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Omer. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, "Are you crazy? You're going to work? Efshar adam chayresh b'shas charisha. You're going to plow during the plowing season. V'zayreah b'shas riya. V'koytzer b'shas ktsira. V'dash b'shas disha. V'zar b'shas haruach. Torah ma tehei aleha." How in the world are you going to become a Talmid Chacham? You ever learn Masechta Krisos? You ever learned Erechin? You ever learned Tamura? You ever learned Tamid? You ever learned Masechta Shabbos? You ever learned Erevin, Nida? There's a big Torah out there. So if you're going to be busy working, you're going to remain Amaretz Dairaisa. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says you cannot go to work. That is the opinion of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Ella, so Elamai, what do you do via Savda Ganecha? What? That's why I introduced. We don't pass like Reb Shimon. Yeah. Yeah. So the Gemara says like this: Elamai, Ela Bizman. So the question is, but what are you how are you going to feed the family? The answer is Bizman she'yisoloisin ritzon yishalma'akoyim. When you do the will of God, Malach denasas de'achem. Other people work for you. When you don't do the will of God, then you work for other people. You'll work for the goyim. Fine. So now the Gemara. By the way, this is the only time in Shas that the Gemara does not give a psak, but instead it just makes a observation. And the Gemara says, Amar Abaye, Harbe asuk Rabbi Shmuel va'osa v'yadan. A lot of people do what Rabbi Shmuel said. They go to work, and it's an effective way to live this world. In other words, we're not telling you how we pass. We're just saying what works. Many people follow Rabbi Shmuel, and it works for them in this world. Many people follow Rabbi Shmuel v'lo also v'yadan, and it doesn't work. So the Gemara is not paskening that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is wrong. The Gemara is just observing that if people do it, it doesn't usually work. What? Okay. Very good. So, Lamaisa. But the opinion of Reb Shimon is anti-working. Reb Shimon says you cannot work. If you're going to work, you lose out the tachlis of Olam Hazeh. That's the psak of Reb Shimon.
Definitely one of the reasons why he's so popular.
What?
Definitely one of the reasons why he's so popular.
Yeah.
People get the other half because you should be learning.
Yeah.
But the first part, they get the message.
It's like I told somebody, maybe come to share. He says baby steps. I'm not sure what that means, baby steps. But anyway, they're baby steps. The first thing you got to do is you stop working, and then we'll worry about the learning later. Okay. So Lamaisa Reb Shimon holds you don't go to work. Here's the problem. There's another Gemara Menachos, and this is probably the biggest stira in Shas. There's Gemara Menachos Daf Tzadik Tes Amud Beis. Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer. We're talking about the Lechem HaPanim. Oh, it's mamish, beautiful. We're talking about the Lechem HaPanim. Yesterday by Shal Shudas we learned the Lechem HaPanim is what? Is the ninth Matnas Kahuna, right? According to the Gemara in Baba Kama.
The 33rd Matnas Kahuna, if you think about it. So the 33rd of the Seder of the Beis HaMikdash Matnas Kahuna.
No. 24 books of the Torah.
Right.
And right. So it's 33, right? So the Shtei Halecha, the Lechem HaPanim is Keneged Lag BaOmer. So let's talk about the Lechem HaPanim. We know the Lechem HaPanim, it says, it has to be Lefanai Tamid. What does Lefanai Tamid mean? Lefanai Tamid means you cannot let any time elapse without Lechem HaPanim on the bread. So the Gemara says in Menachos, how do you do that? I mean, if you're going to take off the old bread, then there's going to be a second that you don't have the new bread on. So it's a machlokes Tanaim. Rabbi Yossi Omer, afilu silek es hayishana shachris, v'sider es hachadasha arvis, ein bekach klum. It's not a problem. You could take off the old bread in the morning, put the new bread on in the evening. It's not a problem. It says tamid. No, tamid means you can't let the shulchan go to sleep at night without bread. The fact that there's 12 hours in between is not a problem. Tamid doesn't mean constantly. Tamid means consistently, every day. So just because you have hours that go by without bread, it's not a problem as long as the shulchan doesn't go to sleep at night without bread. Now the Gemara says an amazing thing, that it says tamid by lechem ha-panim, and from there we extrapolate, since you have to learn tamid, so if tamid by the lechem ha-panim doesn't mean 24 hours a day, tamid means a little in the night and a little in the evening, then let's extrapolate that the same thing with learning. That when the Torah says you have to learn day and night, it doesn't mean 24 hours a day. It means a bisalach in the morning and a bisalach in the evening. Amar Rabbi Ami, midvarav shel Rabbi Yossi nilmod. From the words of Rabbi Yossi we can learn out, afilu loishana adam el parak echad shachris, even if you only learn a parak in the morning, u parak echad arvis, and a parak in the evening, kayem mitzvahs lo yamosh sefer ha-Torah hazeh mipicha. You're mekayem the mitzvah of v'higisa by yomam v'layla. Because tamid doesn't mean 24 hours a day. Tamid means consistently, a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the evening. That's the opinion that we derive from Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yochai said, "What are you so busy keeping the bench warm? You know, you have to learn. It's not." Rabbi Shimon Yochai says, "Afilu loikara adam elakriya shema shachris va'arvis kayim lo yamosh sefer Torah hazeh mipicha v'higisa ba yom v'layla." Rabbi Shimon Yochai says, just say Shema in the morning, Shema in the evening, and you fulfilled your quota of learning for the day. V'davar zeh asur la'amra b'fnei amei haaretz. You're not allowed to tell this to Amaratzim, because they'll. So you can't tell Amaratzim that they fulfill learning Torah by saying Shema in the morning and Shema in the evening. V'Rava Amar mitzvah la'amra b'fnei amaretz. Rava says fakert. It's a mitzvah to tell Amaratzim they shouldn't have to worry that they could work the whole day. They just have to say Shema in the morning and Shema in the evening. So the obvious question and the obvious stira, and this is raised by the Karen Oira, is that Masechta Brachos, Reb Shimon says that if you're going to go to work, you're going to be in Am Haaretz. You're not going to know Masechta Krisos, you're not going to know Tmura, you're not going to know Erechin, you're not going to know Shas. Torah Matahilel, you have to learn, and work. Other people work for you. That's the opinion of Reb Shimon. And here in Menachos, Reb Shimon is saying, don't worry. Just forget. You don't even have to learn a parak in the morning, parak at night. Just say Shema in the morning, Shema in the evening, and you're good to go. Don't you have to learn all day and night? No, that's only the people who say the lechem hapanim has to be on the table 24 hours a day. Who says that? There's another Tana that says tifchei shel zeh ketifchei shel zeh, that as they're removing the first lechem hapanim, they immediately put on the second lechem hapanim. If you hold tifchei shel zeh b'tzad tifchei shel zeh, then when it come out, you mamish have to learn 24 hours a day. But Reb Shimon paskins by lechem hapanim, you put it on, you take off the old one in the morning, you put on the new one in the evening, and as long as you do it, as long as every day the shulchan has lechem hapanim, that's good enough. And then by extrapolation, if you learn a little bit during the day and a little bit at night, you're also good to go.
Say that the first type of thinking of that you have to learn all the time is when he's in the Ma'ara after he came out of the cave, we saw him holding the Hadassah, and he says, "This one's nothing, one's a shomer." In other words, all the works to get me to the place of being something.
So Yassi's saying very good. Yassi wants to say that Reb Shimon had a change of heart. Kan koydem the baskal and kan la'achar the baskal. Before he heard the baskal, when he saw somebody working, let's see the Gemara. Where's the Gemara? The Gemara is Masechta Shabbos on Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Beis. Lag be Omer Lamed Gimel Amud Beis. By the way, it's the 33rd time in Shas Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is mentioned. Is the Gemara in Shabbos Reb Shimon in the cave? Is the 33rd time Reb Shimon is mentioned?
That's the 33rd line on the page.
Is it?
The Bomberg edition.
Really?
I believe someone told me that.
Really?
Yeah, is that like
I didn't know that. That I didn't know. Okay. Shkayach. By the way, what was the last word of Reb Shimon? We said what? Chaim. He was about to say Ayin Dalid, right? What parak in Tehillim is that? I just checked this morning. Kuf Lamed Gimel. Kuf Lamed Gimel. Okay. Anyway, so Kedushas Lag B'Omer. Fine. Something you got to do with the kuf. Fine. So the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai had to run away because he criticized the Romans. So he went into the cave and he had nothing to eat. And he was learning. He was davening in the cave. He was learning up to his neck in sand. And when he davened, he would put on his clothing because when a person davens, you have to wear clothing. It's not enough to be covered. Meaning it's not enough to wear regular shirt. You have to wear a jacket by davening. It's a halacha. So, what? But anyway, that's what the Gemara says, right? So the Gemara says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai put on his clothing, and what happened? He spent 12 years in the cave, and Eliyahu Navi came, and he said, who's going to tell Bar Yochai that the Caesar died? And the Gzeir was batal. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came out. First thing he did was he saw people working, and what did he do? He zapped them with his X-ray vision, and he killed them. So the Baskal came out, and the Baskal said, I didn't take you out of the cave to destroy my world. Get back inside. He went back inside again for 12 months. Mishpat Rishon Begehenim Yud Beis Chodesh. And the Baskal came out again. Okay, let's take 2. And Rebbe Lazar was going around killing people, and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was healing them. So Reb Shimon, at least at first, was very much against working to the point where if he saw somebody working, he would kill you. So obviously he did not hold of working. In other words, it's not like you go to the Rosh.
When he killed you, you weren't going to your hand. It wasn't so bad.
I don't know. It doesn't say, Oh, you mean at least when he killed you, you were pater. It could be if Reb Shimon killed you, then you're taka pater. And I don't know. I know on the day of the yard site we passing like you, but I don't know if there's a halacha we passing like your murderer. Maybe it could be. Okay, there's a Torah on that also. But let's stick to the subject. So Yossi wants to say, and some Achronim say this, and in fact, last year, Lag B'Omer, in Morty's backyard, we said over this pshat that the answer to the stira is kan koidem baskal, kan la'achar baskal. That before he heard the baskal, he paskin working his treif, and then after the baskal, he sort of had a change of heart. He realized that human beings can't reach madrega of malachi hashares, and he understood the value of work, especially if you're working l'shem shamayim, and he had a change of heart. We're going to go a different direction this year, and we're going to speak out the Stei Chemed. The Stei Chemed says that Bechlal, it's not a stira. Look at number 8. The Stei Chemed says that if you look in the Shach in Yardei on Siman Reish Mem Vav, the Shach changes the Girsa. That always works. It's always a good trick. That the Gemara in Menachos, the Shach Stam, he Agavorcha is quoting over this Gemara, and Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Reb Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadak. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Reb Shimon. Then it's not a stira. Taka Reb Shimon Bar Yochai holds you now to work, and if you work, you're going to be an Am Haaretz. And not only that, if Reb Shimon Bar Yochai would see you, he would kill you. And then afterwards, he cooled off, but he still held you now to work. Rabbi Yochanan says the name of Reb Shimon that all you need to do is say Shema in the morning, Shema at night. It's a different Reb Shimon. It's not the same Reb Shimon. Lamaisa doesn't answer all the questions. Why doesn't it answer the questions? Because there's another Gemara in Nedarim Mem Tesam at Beis. What does the Gemara say? That Reb Shimon went to work. That Reb Shimon worked. So it's not going to help to change the Girsa and say that the Gemara that says that all you have to do is say Shema in the morning, Shema in the evening is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai Tzadok. But Taka Reb Shimon Bar Yochai holds you're not allowed to work because Reb Shimon himself worked. How do we know that? L'maisa, look, the Stam Reb Shimon in Shas is Reb Shimon. Whenever it says Reb Shimon, it's Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So, what? You mean? So if you look at number 10, not only that, listen to this. Reb Shimon shakal tzana al kaspe. Reb Shimon put a barrel, a basket on his shoulder. Amar! Gedoyla malacha! Malacha is wonderful. Shemechabeda says Baila. It's very honorable to work. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Otherwise, you're a schlepper. You have to go around collecting. You're going to walk around. Yeah, nowadays you could do it easier. You could bring the credit card machine with you to shul. But even so, it's still not an honorable profession. Yeah, you could still take the credit card machine to chasanas. You could get it down to a science. But l'maisa, it's not the most respectable way to make a living. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai would work, and he would not only work, he was not embarrassed. He would call out, Gedoyla malacha shemechabedes es baila. So again, some Achronim say that after the Baskol, he had such a change of heart. Meaning, before the Baskol, he went around killing people. After the Baskol, he himself went to work. And then the Gemara is not shver. But we're going to say a different pshat today. And this is, yeah.
Why does the Gemara have opinions of somebody in two different stages of their life? The Gemara essentially is distilling the pshat of that Tanner, that Amora. It's weird to have him change from beginning to end in the same Gemara.
I agree to that, because especially if the Gemara in Brachos is saying it's a halachic Gemara, and the Gemara is giving a conclusion, it's giving a psak that many people did like Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and it didn't work. So the Gemara should then say Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, by the way, even Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, gave up his pshat. Yeah. So we're going to learn the pshat of the Maharam Shik, Talmud of Chassam Sofer, Talmud Muvak of Chassam Sofer, the Maharam Shik. He says a very interesting pshat to answer the stira. There's a brais in the Avos Rav Nasan, look at number 12, Rav Doisa ben Horkinus Omer. Rav Doisa ben Horkinus says, Sheina shel shacharis, sleep in the morning, v'yayin shel saharayim, it takes you away from Hashem. Says the Gemara, Sheina shel shacharis, ketzad, Melamed shelo yiskavein adam lishain ad shetavar alav zman kriyashma. Person should not sleep and have in mind that he's going to miss the zman. Shem yashein, if a person sleeps ad shetavar alav zman kriyashma, past zman kriyashma, nimtza bato min Torah, he's losing out on Torah. Shenemar, the pasuk says, hadeles tisayv al tzida, the door turns on its hinges, va'atzel al mitasai, and the lazy man is on his bed. Herstamais over here. We're giving a very colorful picture. Let's paint a picture of a lazy man. A lazy man, he sits there, he's lying in his bed, and he has two pillows. His head is in between two of the pillows. His head is on one pillow, and the other pillow makes his ear not hear the alarm. And he's lying there, and the door is going in and out. The kids are going in and out. His wife is up, but he continues to snooze. He missed Alois, he missed Nes, he missed the Magen Avram, he missed the Gra, he missed Man Tefillah. The door swings on its hinges. Frek the Duvna Magid, what in the world does the door got to do with this? Like, why are we invoking the door? What does the door got to do with the lazy man? The door is on its hinges? What are the hinges? Man dachar shmei, hinges. Why are we bringing in hinges over here? Says the Duvna Magid in the Oil Yaakov, Parshas Tazria, on the 5th line, V'anachnu lo yadanu inyan hamashal, ma hoira asay u'ramizasay b'hanimshal, v'chi lo ymatza Shlomo HaMelech alav hashalom davar hamishapech ki im deles. What Shlomo HaMelech didn't know about fidget spinners? Well, why does he have to talk about a door? We need something that turns. Here, the mashal is the guy sleeping, and the whole world is turning. So what's the door? You could say the baker is baking, and the milkman is delivering, and what's the door got to do with it? Says the Duvna Magid, the Chachma of Shlomo HaMelech is really illuminating the mahalach in life of of an average person who has to work and has to support his family and has to bring home the dough. But nevertheless, look at the door. What does the door teach me? The door teaches me like this. You have a big door. Don't use that door, by the way. You have a big door. The door could weigh a few hundred pounds. But it turns in and out on two hinges. The two hinges make the whole door go. What do these two hinges represent? Kriya Shema Shel Shachris, Kriya Shema Shel Bein Harbayim. What does that got to do with the door? So it's like this. If a person wakes up in the morning, okay, let me check the news last night. Nothing happened. There's just going to be the same 90 news sources reporting, different nuschais. They're going to change it. It did happen. It didn't happen. Nothing happened. Let me check the stocks. Stocks didn't open yet. Let me check the futures. Who cares? It's not going to. You can't do avodah. You can't check before shachris. You can't have your mind on avodah before you say Kriya Shema. Kriya Shema has to be the beginning of the day. The first thing you do is Torah in the morning. That sets the tone for the rest of the day. Once you start the day, the Sfarim write that everything goes after the beginning. First thing you do is you wash Negel Vaser. The first thing you say is Moida Ani. The first thing you look at the mezuzah. I'm not saying, you're mechuyev to do that. It's just a concept. The concept is that even if a person during 99% of his day is involved in the Olam Hagashmias and he has to work, nevertheless, you have to make sure the bookends are bookends of Kedusha. So the first thing you do, as soon as you get up, is you wash Negel Vaser, you say Moida Ani, you come to shul, and you make a Kabbalah that I don't get involved in other items and other matters until after I daven Shachris. It's the same thing with going to sleep. There's an invention called the radio, they told me. Some people, they listen to the radio before they go to sleep. What? Really? I heard there's something called a transistor radio, that people listen to the radio before they go to sleep, and they fall. I'm joking, right? Right? Back in the day. Okay. And they fall asleep, mitoich, listening to the news. Or some people told me there's this box that, I don't know exactly what it does, it flashes lights, and people fall asleep watching it. Yeah, but you destroyed your night, because you have to know that you're sending off your neshama to Shamayim. So whatever you did during the day, you want the bookend to be Kedusha. So what do? You bring Sfarim to your night table, and I guarantee you that if you have a hard time falling asleep, forget the melatonin, just take out a sefer before you go to sleep. Open up the sefer. If you really want to fall asleep right away, take out a Musar sefer. And what? And you go to sleep, mitoich divrei Torah, Kriya Shema Shel Arvis. Whatever the rest of the day is, then, if you start off the day with Kriya Shema Shel Shachris, you start off the day with Kriya Shema Shel Arvis, then it imbues meaning into the rest of the day. You might not be fulfilling the Reb Shimon in the ideal world of Torah Matehei Oleh, the Imzareh B'Shas Zriya, Chorish B'Shas Charisha, but at least you're fulfilling Reb Shimon's Shita. Reb Shimon says that if a person says Kriya Shema Shel Shachris, Kriya Shema Shel Arvis, then it uplifts all the avodah of the course of the day, and it transforms it into Torah. It transforms it into Dvarim Shebekdusha. But you want to make sure that the two hinges of the door, you see, just like a door, you have the top hinge, you have the bottom hinge. The whole door now moves based on the hinges. So too in Ruchnias. If the beginning of the day is Ruchnias, if the end of the day is Ruchnias, then at least it moves the rest of the day. The rest of the day is then defined by the two bookends. It's defined by the Kriya Shema Shel Shachris and the Kriya Shema Shel Arvis. Says the Dubna Magid, that's why Shlomo HaMelech compares the Atzel to the door. The limud to the Atzel is the Atzel says, get up. How am I going to get up? I'm going to learn the whole Shas? That's not from me. The Shlomo HaMelech says, forget the whole Shas. Look at the door. The door has a little piece on the top, a little piece on the bottom, and it changes the whole door. So you get up, you learn a Bissel in the morning, you learn a Bissel in the evening. It will transform your entire day. It will transform your entire life. Reb Shimon says, Torah Matehei Oleh. That's if you work, and you don't start the day with Kriya Shema Shel Shachris and Kriya Shema Shel Arvis. But if you make sure the bookends of the day are Kedusha, it changes the whole day. It's like the hinges of a door. Says the Maram Shik. Let's take a look at this over here. Says the Maram Shik in number 15. Vinei. B'Kriya Shema, anu tzrichin lahamin ba'achdos haboyer. In Kriya Shema, we have to declare our belief in the unity of Hashem. In other words, what does it mean we believe in one Hashem? If you believe there's one God, then the purpose of everything we do should be for the Ribbon Shalom, and to do our Maisim Rak Lishmoi. That's called Yichud Hamasa. That's called Kabbalas Omach Shamayim. Says the Maram Shik, with this we can answer the famous stira in Reb Shimon between Menachos Tzadik Tes, that Reb Shimon says it suffices to say Kriya Shema in the morning and the evening, and yet Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says in Masechta Brachos, Lamed Hey Amid Beis, that Torah Matei Oleh, that you can't work. Says the Maram Shik, the answer to the stira is, what Reb Shimon means is that if a person says Shema in the morning and Shema in the evening, and everything he does in the course of the day, he is Mechavein L'Shem Shamayim, it transforms his Zriya and his Charisha and his Katsira into Torah. The Torah that he learns in the morning and the evening uplifts his entire day. It's like the two hinges of the door, and it moves the entire day. Memela says, Hagoyin Reb Pinchas Friedman in his Sefer Kedai Hi Reb Shimon, he wrote 68 Mamorim on Lag BaOmer. Says Reb Pinchas Friedman, that's why the Gemara says you're now to tell this to Amaratzim. Because Amaratzim are going to say to themselves, really? All I have to say is Shema in the morning, Shema in the evening, Taka, forget the Torah. And Rava says, no, it's a mitzvah to tell to everybody. Because everybody should realize that if you start off your day right and you end your day correctly, it transforms and it's Mekadesh the entire day. Says the Sefer, Kedai Reb Shimon, that we know that the strongest indictment against a person is Bittul Torah. The most acute indictment against a person is not learning enough. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin on Daf Zayin, Poiter Mayim Reishis Madain, which the Gemara darshans, Ein Tchilas Dinoi Shal Adam Nidoin Ela Al Devrei Torah, meaning La'achar Meya Ve'esem Shana. Question number one is, no, show me the Torah. What happened? Why'd you waste your time? That's question number one. Tosfos asks, what do you mean? In the Gemara on Shabbos, the first question is, Nasasav and Nasat V'Amunah, did you work honestly? So Tosfos says, the first question might be, did you work honestly? But the main question, the main indictment is, what's going to be with the Torah? What happened to the Torah? Where's the merchandise? I sent you downstairs to bring down Shas, to bring back up Shas. What happened to it? So that's the biggest oil. The most important responsibility that rests on a person's shoulders is Torah. Comes Reb Shimon, and Reb Shimon says like this, I could pater the world minadin. How could I pater the world minadin? Because since the Ikar Din is Anli Minat Torah, and Reb Shimon has sort of a way out. What's the way out? The way out is Afilu loy kara adam ela kriya shema shel shachris u'kriya shema shel arvis yatsa, you're yatzai. Even though poiter mayim reishis madain, meaning poiter mayim means ein tchilas dinoi shel adam ela al devrei Torah. Nevertheless, Reb Shimon is magein aleinu. Reb Shimon has a unique vantage point where even though Reb Shimon held of learning more than anybody else, to the point where if he saw people utilizing all of their time for learning, he would look at them and zap them. But on the other hand, it's the Shita of Reb Shimon, which is learnt out from where? The Lechem Apanim, which is another beautiful remez to Lechem Apanim. We pointed out that the 48 days of Sfira, the first 24 days are Keneged Chaf Dalad Sifrei Tanakh, and the next 24 days are Keneged, the 24 Matnas Kahuna, the 9th Matana L'Koyin being Lechem Apanim. So Lag BaOmer is Keneged, the Lechem Apanim. From the Lechem Apanim, Reb Shimon derives Afilu Loikar Adam Ela Kriya Shema Shel Shachris Kriya Shema Shel Arvis Yatsa. So Taka, we hope that on this great day of Lag BaOmer, Zechusai Yagein Aleinu, that we should learn the important limud of beginning our day correctly and ending our day correctly, and then our day will be like the door, where the door is completely transformed by the two hinges. So we should remember the teaching of Reb Shimon, Kriya Shema Shel Shachris, Kriya Shema Shel Arvis, Zechusai Yagein Aleinu. Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.